Okay, so here's my hot take. I actually really liked Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. Okay, I don't love her, but she does a great job with the character in the first two movies she was in, and gave a lot of nuance to the character that didn't exist in the original trilogy. Okay, I'm losing you. Okay, fine. She is very clearly very different from the original source material, and is basically a completely original character, but still is a very interesting take that I really enjoy and I think deserves to exist. No? Okay, jeez. Okay, I think Mystique is a really interesting character that acts as a metaphor for the oppression of women by men of power, who ultimately receives her own character arc where she learns to break free from the ideologies and worldviews of the men around her. Um, J-Law, bad? But not in these two movies.
Y'all, we leaving right now.
You know what? No one's gonna watch this video anyway. I'm in love with Jennifer Lawrence. Okay, so let's get the obvious out of the way. We are not going to talk about these two movies because they're bad and they don't exist. However, I do think that people tend to look at this stuff and it makes them forget what a great character she was in 2011's First Class and 2014's Days of Future Past, in which Jennifer Lawrence plays a genuinely interesting and nuanced character with her own complete character arc from young, naive, and hopeful to a jaded but conflicted badass, to a confident woman who's forging her own path. A character arc that we've never seen in any other iteration of that character. Specifically, the scene that strikes me as not only one of the best scenes in the entire series, but also one of the best in all superhero movies, is the climax of X-Men Days of Future Past, in which Mystique is given the choice of whether or not to kill Bolivar Trask. So I think this scene, this one excellent scene, deserves to be overanalyzed by another random dude on the internet with a blue Yeti microphone. Hey, how you doing? Like, comment, and subscribe. This video has been sponsored by Square. Okay, so let's start with a brief history lesson because I just watched Hamilton for the fourth time and I'm all about that history. So superhero movies weren't doing too hot for a while, but then X-Men and X2 came out in the early 2000s and everyone was like, fun fact, X-Men and X2 were two of the highest grossing superhero movies that never even had a director. Wow, look at that, how'd that happen? Anyway, X-Men 3 and Origins Wolverine happened, and everyone was like, so Fox was like, okay, we've pulled a couple of stingers now, so let's make an actual good movie. So they made X-Men First Class, and it was actually pretty good. It was a really nice emotional drama about Charles Xavier and Eric Lyncher. Two gay men, one from a background of privilege and prestige, and another from persecution and poverty, coming together and forming a club for all the gays to live with each other and be gay all day, without having to worry about being feared and hated for who they are.
I thought I was alone. You're not alone. Eric, you're not alone.
Oh, yeah, and collectively they could like destroy the entire world with their powers or something, but that's not super relevant. Anyway, Jennifer Lawrence, pre-Katniss Everdeen, plays Raven Darkholme, Charles Xavier's childhood best friend and adoptive sister who struggles with her identity as a mutant.
Mutant and proud.
A stark contrast to the cool and confident version of the character, portrayed by Rebecca Romijn in the original X-Men trilogy. Lawrence's portrayal is much more young and innocent, insecure and unsure of herself. One of the most obvious differences between the two is that Romijn's version of the character is almost always in her natural blue form.
Then why not stay in disguise all the time? You know? Look like everyone else.
Because we shouldn't have to.
While Jennifer Lawrence, in First Class at least, is almost always a blonde white woman. Romaine is cold, driven, sure of herself and who she is. Lawrence is none of those things.
Could you pass me my robe?
And that's a really interesting place to start her character. At the beginning of the movie, Raven is secretly in love with Charles, but he doesn't seem to really show any interest in her, partly because, well, she's kind of his sister, but also implicitly because he has some internalized racism of his own towards mutants.
Would you date me? Looking like this.
What?
He likes mutants, sure, but only when they pass, you see.
God's sake, Raven.
Throughout the movie, as Charles and Eric's gang of gays grows and grows, Raven herself grows as a character as she experiences more than just Charles's worldview and ideology. She, in her natural form, is rejected as a romantic interest and as a human being by Charles.
What?
And then by Hank McCoy, who's got a couple of internalized self-loathing of his own.
My feet, in your natural blue form, never be deemed beautiful. You look beautiful now.
And it's not until she speaks with Eric that she is, for the first time in her life, allowed to truly and fully be herself. And that's really the major reason why she turns on Charles and joins Eric's Brotherhood of Mutants at the end of the film. Because she's been burned by Charles and by Hank and by humanity all her life. And she's finally decided to stand up for herself and for who she is. The hopeful, naive Raven is gone, and
Never
what's
forget.
left is Mystique.
Mutant and proud.
When we see her again in X-Men Days of Future Past, she's different. This is Jennifer Lawrence post-Katniss, so now she's quiet, confident, and badass, much in the same vein as in the original X-Men trilogy. But she still clearly has a lot of internal conflict.
She does.
The main premise of this movie is that there's a prophecy that Mystique will kill Tyrion Lannister, causing a massive domino effect that somehow leads to the destruction of the entire world. So Wolverine goes back in time to stop her. And also, wow, yet another X-Men movie that had no director. There seems to be a pattern. Anyway, this version of Mystique has become kind of a blend between Xavier and Magneto's ideologies. She's been radicalized onto Magneto's side for years now, fighting for mutant rights, often using violence when necessary. But unlike Magneto, she's still clearly hesitant to actually kill someone.
Killing one man isn't enough.
It never was for you.
And this idea of Mystique being a blend of both their ideologies isn't subtext, it's basically stated outright by these very men. But listen to how they speak about her.
Girl I raised, she was not capable of killing.
Didn't raise her, you grew up with her. She couldn't stay a little girl forever, that's why she left.
She left because you got inside her head. That's not my power.
They don't talk about her like she's her own person, with her own complex feelings and desires. Xavier only sees her as Raven, the young, sweet, naive girl that he raised, who was corrupted. And Magneto only sees her as Mystique, a weapon to be used in his crusade against humans. To these two men, she's nothing more than a pawn in their war. They don't really see her as their own person. It's no coincidence that a conversation about her autonomy as a human being immediately leads into a game of chess. Now, Charles Xavier being a pretty morally ambiguous character is not a new thing. It's been in the comics for a long time, and in the live-action movies, it was more specifically about his need to control the women in his life, whether it be Jean, or Moira, or Mystique, or Jean, again. In First Class, he controlled the type of person he wanted Mystique to be.
I expect more from you.
And in Days of Future Past, he's trying to find her so he can once again control her, because he thinks he knows what's best for her. And yeah, we, the viewer, are probably tempted to take Xavier's side on the matter, because we know the fate of the entire world is at stake. But when you consider the fact that Mystique has been spending the past 10 years of her life actively fighting for mutant rights, putting herself at constant risk to protect and defend people like her, all the while Xavier has been keeping himself holed up and drugged up in his mansion for years. It's hard not to see him as the bad guy here. Around 2/3 of the way through the movie, Charles Xavier has a heartwarming conversation with himself from the future, where he regains the strength to be himself again. He had given up on his dream and has been hiding himself away in his mansion for years because he's afraid of the pain of not having control over the situation.
So much pain.
And the older Charles Xavier teaches him that he must learn to let go of that need for control, to allow himself to feel his pain and the pain of others, embrace it even, because that is what will make him stronger.
It will make you more powerful than you ever imagined.
He can't control everything in his life, and he needs to learn to be okay with that, and instead to hold on to hope that things will be better, and that his dream of peace between mankind and mutant kind will one day come true. And what he does next is reach out to Mystique and try to stop her, not through force and with violence, but by talking to her and appealing to her former compassionate and hopeful self. However, it is important to note that he is doing this by taking over the minds of strangers. That's what he does, after all. But also that he does explicitly say he would shut down Mystique's mind if he could.
Shut her down, Charles. Get in her head. She's not letting me in. I'm barely holding on. I'm not strong enough yet.
And ultimately, the message he's giving her isn't really what she needs to hear right now.
But we can stop it right now, you and I. You just have to come home.
Come home to me, my sweet Raven. Come home where you belong, and throw away the past 10 years of your life that you've dedicated to this cause. Because bad things will happen if you are allowed to do what you want. Just listen to me. I know what's best for you.
Good luck, Charles.
And now, finally, I get to actually talk about the scene that this video is supposed to be about. The scene starts with Magneto placing everyone under quarantine and then immediately incapacitating Wolverine and sending him flying away. The whole end of the world plot is still present, but clearly not the focus of this scene anymore. That's Wolverine's mission, and he's literally been thrown out of the scene completely. And we barely see any more scenes of the future other than a few sparse shots over Magneto's monologue, where he talks about the power that people like him wield, and the chaos and destruction they could cause. Just before Mystique comes out of hiding, takes him down, and points the gun at Trask. Now, the meaning behind this is very clear. This does not matter anymore. What really matters now, the real focus of this scene, is Mystique. This scene isn't about whether or not the world is saved, it's about whether or not Mystique will shoot. This isn't a battle for the fate of the world. It's an internal conflict for the fate of Mystique. Whether she will choose to become the ruthless assassin that sparks a war between mutant and man, bringing about the very chaos and destruction that Magneto promised. Or will she become the hero who stopped him and saved everyone, bringing about the potential for peace. And Charles Xavier appears to her again, but he doesn't repeat the same things he said last time. He knows that won't work anymore. He can force her to stop, he's able to shut her down, but he chooses not to, because he knows he can't do that anymore.
Shut her down, Charles. I've been trying to control you ever since the day we met. And look where that's got us.
He's learned that he can't control everything in his life, and that he can't control her, and that true strength comes from the not knowing. The hope that she will make the right decision on her own, completely of her own free will. He's fully learned to respect her as her own being, and whatever happens next, he leaves up to her. It is her choice.
Everything that happens now is in your hands.
It's the greatest gift we have, to bear their pain without breaking. And it's born from the most human power. Hope.
I have faith in you, Raven.
And she chooses peace. She leaves not as the sweet, naive Raven that Charles grew up with, and she's not the cold, ruthless assassin that Magneto wants her to be. She breaks free of the ideologies of these two men who have been trying to control her all her life, and she stops being a pawn in their war. Whatever she chooses to do now, and whoever she chooses to be, will be something completely new. But it will be her choice as her own person. And honestly, I feel like this is where her story should have ended in the series. I don't think we should get to see what Mystique does with her life because she's chosen to leave the narrative. She's not a part of the war between Charles and Eric, Professor X and Magneto anymore. And I think the sequels do a major disservice to her character by dragging her back in when it's clear that she has no place in the story anymore, and that Jennifer Lawrence is just completely checked out.
The women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
But anyway, why this scene of all scenes? Well, I think it's because it's by and far the most emotional climax of any X-Men movie, and one of the best endings of any superhero movie out there. Like, sure, I like Logan just as much as anyone else, and I guess Infinity War and Endgame were pretty good. But at the end of the day, almost every single superhero movie ends with a big fight where the good guys punch the bad guys until the world is saved. That's pretty much how every single Marvel movie or DC movie or even every single X-Men movie ends, Logan included. But Days of Future Past subverts this by having the central climax be not on an external battle, but an internal one. The world is saved not by the snapping of fingers or the stabbing of foes, but by a man learning to let go of his need to control this woman, and by that woman choosing to spare a human life. It's intensely personal, and it decides the fate of the world. And in this world, the real world where powerful men constantly exert control over not just women, but racial, sexual, and gender minorities as well, and where people of power are constantly inciting violence over others, I feel like that's an important lesson for all of us. So whatever happens in the rest of this hell that is 2020, just remember that the fate of many lives is in your hands as well. So please, wear that mask. But hey, I guess that's just your choice.
Look at where we are. Look at where we started. I know I don't deserve you,
Raven.
but hear me out. That would be enough. But I'm not afraid. I know who I
Adopted as my sister,